Hi, Eric Rand here from Sayrite. In this tutorial video, we're going to show you how to reupholster a bike seat. In this situation, it's actually for a unicycle, but the concepts are the same. This one's actually more shapely. We're going to show you exactly the process to get it done so it comes out beautiful like this.
As said, this unicycle seat has more shape than a bike seat, so if you can do this, you can definitely do a bike seat. Let's get started. The first step is removing the old cover and evaluating the foam.
So this is the old seat for a unicycle, and you can tell on the back side that they did not staple it because it's a metal frame. They used contact cement to staple the vinyl, or to adhere the vinyl in place. And the foam in the backside is in really bad shape. This is a closed cell foam, so we're going to try to repair the foam a little bit. We'll be taking off the vinyl cover, and the foam in the front from crashing is also in bad shape. So this is what it used to look like, and hopefully we can restore it with Allsport vinyl. We'll show you how. As we're removing the old cover, we can see that it was glued actually to the foam, probably with a contact cement as well. I'm not sure we're going to do that, but that's how it was done. So the cover has no seam for the top, and this is very shapely piece. So this was probably molded. In other words, they put it in a mold and they heat it up, and then they put a press over the top of it, and the vinyl actually takes the shape of the contour. We can't do that, obviously. We don't have the equipment for that. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew in a top plate that matches this form, and then a boxing that goes around the sides. That way we can get a shapely vinyl piece without it having to be molded in a professional machine.
Since our foam is damaged, but we're going to reuse it, we need to repair it. This chapter will show you how.
If you look at the seat in the back, this is where it's been smashed by crashes, and crashes in the front. So there's foam missing. So I'm going to cut a strip of foam that is 2 inches, and we're going to try to repair this spot. And then an expensive foam. This is closed cell right here, so it's nice and firm. But back here, we just need it to look good. And over here, we need it to look good. Now, if you crash again, you're going to probably ruin it, but we're not going to crash. So I said 2 inches, and I like to cut my sew foam with a rotary cutter because it's just a lot easier than using scissors, because it gets a straight line. Nice. Sew foam has a fabric on the back side so that it can be sewn through. Obviously, we're not using it for that. I'm going to put the glue on the side with the fabric so that if I need to shave it, I can, so the foam will be out. So we're going to use Cushion Right foam and fabric adhesive, and I'm going to spray carefully here this area that needs to have the glue adhered to. And there's a little crack here. We can actually glue that together. We have to let the solvents evaporate before we press it together. And we'll do this also to this piece of foam on the back side, over top of the fabric. Okay, we have to wait till it becomes tacky and no longer transfers to your finger, and some of the glue is still transferring, so we have to wait a little bit longer. Okay, it's now tacky and not transferring to my finger, so the solvents have evaporated. I'm going to start here, and we may have to trim it some more. I won't want this edge up here to be flush. Oh yeah, and let's glue this together too. Forgot about that. So we're just going to press that down, which will heal or fix that spot. And that's a pretty good transition, and our vinyl should be able to wrap around that and hopefully not see anything here, because this will compress pretty nicely. It's pretty easy foam to compress. Now these used to be good scissors, but we've used them a lot for foam and glue, and so they're not that great of scissors anymore. So I'm going to trim this away, small sections at a time, to try to get the shape that I want. And yeah, that's pretty good. That should compress nicely. And maybe just trim a little bit of this away so that it's more rounded. And this is your goal, is to try to get it to be nice and shapely. I'm going to do the same thing over here, and then we are going to do the front in the same manner. So I did the same thing to the front. I didn't go all the way up to the top here because it seemed to have a natural valley in here, but that should allow us to take the vinyl pretty nicely around there. This should compress down nicely. Okay, so we're ready for patterning.
The only thing we need to pattern is the top plate. In this chapter, we'll show you how that's done.
So because this has got so much shape, I'm going to make a top plate that goes around here and follows this contour here, and then we're going to sew around the perimeter of boxing. So I'm going to take double-sided tape, and I'm going to try to basically mimic what I want as far as a shape goes. And the nice thing is I can peel this off if I don't like it. So this is going to be the edge of my top plate, and this will also help to stick down our pattern material as well. So, and I may just mirror the other half because it looks like it's about the same shape, and just find the center position. Let's see, the top plate should probably come around here, wrap around. I'm going to break the tape, and then I'm going to make sure that it's following a natural arch. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad actually. Let's have it go around the front here. I'm using a soft tape measure to find the center, and 7 inches would be about right there. I'm just going to mark it with a marker there, and then I'm going to find the center in the front as well. Looks like right there at 2 inches. So then I can mirror it. Need to add a little bit more double-sided tape to the halfway mark, or at least a little bit past the halfway mark. And I think I'm going to add a little bit here as well, just so I can hold the pattern material down right to there. All right, now we're going to use Durascrim, and I've already cut a small piece of it to get it to go over that, and we're going to smooth it down as much as possible. We have to take off the transfer paper to reveal the double-sided tape, like that. Okay, we're going to stick this down. We're going to start at the center because that's the lowest spot, and we're going to smooth it out, and we're going to go down to our double-sided tape and stick it to that without wrinkle. And obviously there's shape here, so I'm going to cut to allow the vinyl to take that curve there. And we just want to get this side down nice and flat and stuck to the double-sided tape. Okay, and then I'm going to cut a slit on this side to allow it to relax up to that point. Okay, so with that down, that's pretty good. We're using Allsport, which is actually a great material for stretching. I'm just trying to get the center position over here because we're going to fold this in half afterwards. So I think that's pretty good. It's not totally flat, but the Allsport is, you're going to see it does amazing things. So I'm going to mark the center position here. That's where we're going to fold on. And I'm going to mark the top plate. Now I'm not going to necessarily follow the double-sided tape. I'm just going to mark something that it looks good to the eye and will look good once it's sewn on here, and will allow us to take the shape. Sometimes doing dash marks is easier than doing a straight line, and then you can always take these off and redo it if you don't like it, but I think this is looking pretty good. And then we're going to mark this out so we know that that's the outside surface. And I think that's pretty nice. Now let's take it off. This is the outside, and I can fold it to either the outside or the inside. I'm going to turn it over and put double-sided tape on it so that I can fold it and have it stick to itself and not have the double-sided tape take off any of our marking here. Make sure the double-sided tape is flat. It doesn't have to go all the way. We can just do that, and it's enough to fold it. Okay, so now I'll peel this off, and we will fold directly on our marks, but let's put a line across there too so that we know exactly where the center is. From mark to mark. That's our fold. So I can see them right on the fold. Nice. Now, flip it over and cut on our marks. Now, what about seam allowance? Well, this is a little bit on the big side, but I'm just going to add, say, what is that, an 1/8 inch seam allowance, because Allsport stretches nicely. So I'm just going to cut an 1/8 inch outside of my marks. So there it is cut, and now we can pull it apart and get rid of that double-sided tape on the back side and inspect it to make sure we're happy with it. I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to peel off this double-sided tape.
Next, we're going to pattern and cut our 360-degree stretch vinyl fabric.
This is Allsport. It is a 360-degree stretch material. See how it stretches this way, it stretches this way, and obviously it stretches along the bias almost equally, which is awesome for very shapely projects like this. So let's flip it over. This is the outside of our pattern. I'm just going to put double-sided tape down just to hold this in place and peel it off. We want the outside of the pattern to be face down since our fabric is upside down. And we're just going to put it on like that, and I will trim around it with scissors right on the edge of our pattern. You can trace it if you'd like, but this is easy. And then cut. We got to take the double-sided tape off. Hopefully it's not going to ruin your foam. Nice. Okay. Now what we need to do is measure for our boxing that's going to be sewn onto our top plate. If I can get the double-sided tape off my fingers. So I'm going to take a soft tape measure, and our plate is basically starting right here. So I'm going to measure down and over, and I'm going to cut a boxing strip that's 4 inches so that we can wrap around and glue it to the backside, because this is metal, so we're going to have to use contact cement. So what's the length of our boxing? Well, I'm going to measure from the center position and just kind of follow the shape, because I'm going to cut it long. So 17 inches, let's just go 19 inches times 2, and that'll be our length. We're going to sew our boxing on starting back here and going around, and then there'll be a seam at the back. You could have the seam at the front, but I'm going to put it in the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this so that I can find the center, and I'm going to put a very small notch on it to know exactly where that center is.
We'll be tacking our boxing to the top plate in this chapter.
I'm going to reduce the stitch length to about 3 millimeters in forward and reverse. And I have some scrap, and I folded it in half. Outside surfaces are facing each other, and I'm going to test my tension. And I put a number 18 needle in here. A smaller stitch with a smaller needle, and if you have the appropriate amount of tension, will mean that when you pull, the tension actually looks pretty good, on the vinyl hard, you won't necessarily see the stitches show up. A larger needle, you'll see the stitches show up. The longer stitch length you will, and if your tension's off. Ours looks good. One of the great features of the UltraFeed sewing machines is the Worker Bee Power Pack system. This lever can control your top end speed, so you can set it wherever you'd like. This would be the slowest speed. When combined with a very powerful 1/4 inch horsepower motor and the fact that we have a speed reducer, a 2-belt drive system, and the option of a larger diameter balance wheel like this one, the Monster 2 balance wheel, there's no other sewing machine in the marketplace with slow speed control like this and the power that the UltraFeed sewing machines offer. I'm going to mark our fabric at 3/8 inch because 3/8 inch is going to be my seam allowance. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my top plate, outside surfaces would face each other like this, and we're going to put that right on the center point because we're going to have to sew this together once I get around the assembly. I'm going to do a tacking stitch, and I'm going to start about that far, an inch at least, right here, and start sewing so that when we reach that point we can sew that together. The tacking stitch is nice because what it does is it allows me to basically sew. I'm going to move my needle to the right to sew this assembly and concentrate on the where it's being sewn, and then I can concentrate on my exact seam allowance. So see, I'm just going to match up the edges, and I'm not even going to do any reversing there. I'm just going to sew really close to that raw edge, and I'm going to round this corner. Sometimes you can put slits in the corner, but this fabric looks like it's going to take that corner pretty nicely. So we're just matching it up. So an tacking stitch all around the perimeter until we get to the center position again, and I will stop a few inches prior to that, and we'll show you what we do there. This turn is rather gradual, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a few relief notches. I hope my hands aren't in the way. So just don't go too deep, and that'll help it to take that turn at that locale. So watch when I get up to it. See how that opens up the fabric. Nice. Now we're almost to that center position, and I probably should have did some reversing at the beginning there because I'm going to pull against the fabric there. So I stopped an inch or so from the center position. And what we need to do is we need to determine where these are going to intersect. And so this one's basically right where it needs to go. If I lay that one down, you can see it intersects right here. So I'm going to mark here. This is where I need to sew it together, and then I need to be 3/8 inch outside of that, which is right about there. So I'm going to cut this one right at this juncture here. So we're going to cut right there, go straight down. Make sure you don't cut anything in your assembly. Okay. Now we'll put outside surfaces facing each other, and you can double side tape this, or you can staple it, but I'm just going to hold it like that, and we're going to sew 3/8 inch down from there, which is right against that foot with the needle in center position. And I am going to do a little bit of reversing here at the top. And we'll sew this down. And reverse right here. Okay, so now we can splay this out like this, and we could put a piece of tape on this and do a top stitch here and a top stitch here, but a double stitch would look pretty nice. So I'm going to put some double-sided tape down on the seam just in the middle, and we're going to put a reinforcing strip down here, which will add strength, because if you just sew the top stitch into the two flanges, it does nothing besides appearance, but this will add a little bit of strength. And I usually use something light. I think this is carpet binding. It's obviously too wide, but who cares? Put it down, making sure this is totally flat and splayed out nicely. And look at your stitch before you sew it. Is it splayed out? Yes. So we're going to do a top stitch here and here. Okay, so I put this in the machine, and obviously it's a really close sew since we've assembled a lot of it. And I'm just going to use the left side of my center foot as a guide, and I've changed the stitch length to 6 millimeters. And I'll do a little bit of reversing here. Hopefully so that reversing doesn't show up, because I want to try to keep it in my seam allowance. And we're just going to sew down this side, and then we'll sew down the other side. Doing a little bit of reversing here. Okay, and then we'll flip it around and we'll sew down the other side, and we'll have 2 top stitches here. I'm just going to trim off the excess of the backer like that. And now, take a look at this. Wow, looks nice. Wah, 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 wah. I'm going to finish the tacking stitch, which is pretty easy, and then we're going to switch to 3/8 inch, and I'll show you how to do that.
It's now time to grate the semi-flat felled seam around the perimeter.
Put the magnetic guide on, and I also put the needle in center position. And so now, since it's all tacked together, all we have to do is just keep this edge up against the magnetic guide, and this is a 3/8 inch stitch. So just sew around it, and making sure that when you come to corners that you don't sew any bubbles in the seam allowance area. So I just lay these flat when I turn a corner, trying to splay out the bubble. And sew all the way around till we get to the spot where we began. Okay, we've sewn all the way around it, as you can see here, and I'm just going to start at the middle, and we're going to do a semi-flat felled seam. So we're going to sew in the boxing, and we're going to splay this out so that we're sewing with the outside surface up. Before we make the top stitch, splay your seam allowance where it's going to go in the boxing like this. And if you've got little wrinkles like this, you want to chop those out. So you can see a wrinkle there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to take my scissors, making sure that I don't cut any of my good fabric, and I'm going to make a little triangle there, going not too deep. And now when you do that, see what that does? Makes it nice and smooth, and we're going to do that like at all the corners that have any kind of a wrinkle like that, so it's smooth. Okay, I'm going to start at the back, and I'll probably do some reversing there, though I could tie my stitches together, but I want the seam allowance to go into the boxing, which I can feel. This is the thickest part, so I'm going to stick it underneath here, and I've got it set for 6mm stitch length. I don't want to do a small stitch length for my top stitch. And again, I'm just going to use that side of the foot, and I probably won't do any reversing here. I'll probably just sew over top of these stitches when I reach around. This is going to be a little bit difficult to see because obviously I have to work with small areas, so I'm just going to start here, and I'm splaying the fabric out and making sure that I'm sewing in my seam allowance in the boxing, and we'll sew around it, going nice and slow, because everybody's going to see this, and splay it out with the needle buried. The needle's not buried. I'm going to bury it. There I go, and that way I can make adjustments without losing my spot. And you just want to splay out the section that you're sewing until you get all the way around to where we began. Pretty easy. Follow that shape. And make sure you don't sew any of your assembly in there, because see how this close that was, so I just have to make sure I'm not sewing the boxing on the other side in.
And now the fun part, applying the cover with contact cement over the foam and the frame.
Our cover's done, but after I looked at the seat, you can see this side curves in a little bit. I probably should have put the pattern on and had this come in a little bit like that, and on both sides, and that would have probably helped a little bit. But this is Allsport, and so even though we didn't do that, it'll still stretch like crazy. So what I want to do is I want to put this on. And then I want to try to position the seam where it should go, which is right along this edge like that. Doesn't have to be exact right now. This is going to be pulled down like that. And this seam looks like it needs to be adjusted a little bit here. Like that, okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my grease pencil and I'm going to pull this, because I have to know where to put the contact cement. So I'm going to pull this seam up, and I'm going to put a mark right on the fabric, and this is an approximate mark, and pull this up put a mark all the way around, basically where it's going to be pulled taut. So I know that the glue goes over here. We're going to do this all the way around. I'm going to take it off, and now that we have that mark all the way around, we can tell where we need to apply the contact cement. This is S18, and you need this to dry before you start adhering it. So I'm just going to use my brush here, and I'm going to put it on this edge and coat it well all around the perimeter, all around it, just to that line. And then I'm also going to do it to the metal frame inside of here and along this edge all the way around, coating it well, because we want this to stick very, very well indeed. I put the contact cement all around the perimeter, and I put some in the middle here where it may not stick, so I put some on the foam here because that's going to have to be pressed down, and a little bit in the middle of that. And you want to make sure that the contact cement is basically dry to the touch before you stick it down, and it is. So we're going to take this cover and we're going to put it in position. And I'm not going to press on the middle until I get it exactly where I want it. Let's just put it on like this. And where I want it is I want the seams to fall, obviously, so it's centered. It's not centered yet. And the nice thing about contact cement is it's only going to stick where the contact cement is. So we need to go over a little bit more. There we go, that's a little bit better. I like that. The front. That looks pretty good, centered there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do with that down there, I'm going to start at the center. I'm going to push down here. There's contact cement there, so it's going to want to stick. And that looks pretty good as far as being in the center position here. So, and then it will stick more and more as it cures up. So we're going to turn this around, and we're going to pull, starting at the center, and we're going to put that seam up close to this edge, and I'm going to tack it down in just one spot first, just to make sure we're happy. And then I'm going to come over here, and we're going to pull this seam up, and you can see how this material just stretches like crazy, which is awesome. And we're going to tack that up. Now we can always peel it up if we want to, but that's not bad. We got a little bit of a bubble there. Let's see, where's it at there? So we need to come over here and pull a little bit more to work that out. And then I'm just going to go around, see how we can pull it nice and tight, because it's a four-way stretch. And we go over here, put my fan down here, I'll pull like that, push that down. I'm not pushing it down super hard on my contact cement until I'm happy with the positioning and everything, and making sure that I'm getting the wrinkles out. So here I have a wrinkle here. I'm going to do this. Trying to work that out. It's looking better. So I think you can kind of get the idea here. That's looking good. I think this is a little bit further down than this one, so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to pull this one, or either release the other one. I don't know yet. I'm just going to look at it. Oh, that's looking better. This one needs to go down more. So this is what we're going to do. Now when it comes to the front, I'm going to have to cut some of the material away to get that. And if you have to put more contact cement on, you can, but that looks pretty good. So here at the front, I'm going to work the vinyl out by moving it with my fingers. I know this is a lot of filming, but just want to get the concept down. Look at that. That's coming along well. So we're going to keep doing this until we get it exactly the way we want it. Now here in the front, like I talked about, we're probably going to have to cut some relief slits in this. I'm going to cut a little bit of a relief triangle in this because there's excess fabric, and probably over here as well, but I just don't want to go into the spot where obviously it would look bad. So that gives me the ability to come around here and stick it to my contact cement, and I'm going to take out a little bit more of this as well. Probably even more than that. Yeah. As long as you can get the wrinkles to the back side, that's what your goal is. And you can see that you can peel it up a little bit even with the contact cement down there and reapply it, or put more contact cement down. So I'm getting this wrinkle to the back side so nobody will ever see it. Yeah, look at that. That's starting to look good. All right, I think you get the idea.
Our upholstered seat for a unicycle is now complete. This is more shaped than a typical bike seat, so that process should even be easier than what you see here. Check out the full materials and tools list in the description below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe and click the bell to be notified of new tutorial videos when they become available. Currently, we are trying to reach 500,000 subscribers. We'd appreciate your help. I'm Eric Grant, and from all of us here at Sailrite, thanks for watching.